Good morning, Oklahoma. It's the Wokey here. After a few days' absence, I'm back on a Labor Day 2025. And today I'd like to talk about something that I talk to my classes, U.S. history classes, about every year. And I would always introduce my first semester with a lecture about the two recurring themes that would reoccur throughout U.S. history that told a lot about us as a people and how we'd handled various situations. The first theme that I would always hit at the beginning of the new school year was the fact that cultural ignorance had got a lot of people hurt and killed in North America. And the second was the recurring theme of the American tendency to spiritualize greed. Let's go to the first one and get that out of the way. Cultural ignorance got a lot of people hurt and killed. I want to say this right at the outset, that a lot of times we did things as Anglo-Saxons, as we came to dominate this continent. We did a lot of things to people that we meant well. We really intended to do the best we could by them. Our best religious instincts kicked in, and we tried to do what we thought was right. But even in those circumstances, cultural ignorance has caused us to hurt people. And probably the best example, of course, and probably the one that you will think of first, would be our Anglo-Saxon European Americans' interaction with Native Americans. We meant well with a lot of what we did. Not all of it, of course. Sometimes we were just downright hostile, but we meant well with our efforts to help these people as they became more and more marginalized and the minority among us. Probably the biggest thing was our attempt to assimilate them into mainstream European American culture. I'm going to give you an example, one of the saddest in our histories that you don't see much in the textbooks, but it had to do with the Pawnee Indians that lived up in western Nebraska. If you recall your U.S. history, in the summer of 1876, at the end of June, that Custer had met the Sioux Indians at the Little Bighorn and had been killed. Custer's last stand. He and his 220-some men had been killed. Well, there was an almost immediate political outcry for us to do something about the Indian problem. We got to get these people under control. They're killing too many white settlers as they're trying to move west. And so we started the process of dealing with that. William Tecumseh Sherman and thousands of U.S. soldiers embarked for the West to get the Indian problem under control. But we also tried to do some things for our loyal Indian brethren, and the Pawnee had a history of always siding with the United States. They'd acted as our guides. They had sided with European Americans in trying to solve the Indian problem. And the result was that most Indians just hated them, especially the Sioux. And the government realized this. Grant realized that the Pawnee Indians were in danger, all 5,500 of them there in western Nebraska. So they proposed to move them south to Indian Territory on Black Bear Creek, about 50 miles northwest of where Tulsa is now. And so they loaded them up in late September, early October, a good time of the year to be walking down south from western Nebraska across Kansas down to Black Bear Creek. And they got most all 5,500 of them down here safely and in good shape, and settled them along Black Bear Creek. Well, they had been promised lumber and building materials to build white man-style housing. And this was going to come on in a wagon train, basically, of teamsters driving wagons loaded with lumber and nails and windows and doors, coming from St. Louis and Kansas City from the railheads down to Black Bear Creek so that these 5,500 could build white man style housing and live on their little allotments or the equivalent thereof, and live like white men. And so the 5,500 didn't much like the idea, but that was their choice as they came towards winter. The problem was none of this material showed up by late November, and it was starting to get cold. Well, the Indian agent, who was a Quaker, he started to panic. He didn't have the materials, promised materials. So he didn't know what to do, and the nearest telegraph pretty much was up at Wichita. So he went the 100 and some miles up to Wichita and contacted the Bureau of Indian Affairs, Interior Department, Washington, D.C., and said, what are we supposed to do? These materials haven't showed up. It turned out later we found out that the Teamsters had just sold this material to various general stores or parties unknown along the way, the 400 miles down. They just sold it where they could, pocketed the money, and disappeared. But at that point, the Indian agent, the Quaker, was desperate, and so he wired the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Interior Department. Said, what am I supposed to do with these people? They're facing winter. And they said, we don't know, but you cannot let them build their traditional houses. And their traditional houses were octagon-shaped log cabins piled with dirt and grass that stayed about 60 degrees during the winter. It had housed about 18 family members and closest family members, and they would stay about 60 degrees in the cold winters, and in the summers it'd stay about 60 degrees also. And that's what the tribal elders wanted to do. They said, there's plenty of cottonwood trees along Black Bear Creek, and we'd like to build these traditional houses. Well, the Bureau of Indian Affairs said, under no circumstances let them build their traditional houses. We are wanting to get them to live like European Americans as soon as we can. So the Quaker agent was desperate, and he went to the nearby fort. There was a U.S. fort there in Wichita, and he bought 300 army tents. Each would hold about 18 people sleeping in their snugly walled tents, took them back, set them up along Black Bear Creek, and they spent their first winter in tents there. And the result was the old people and the children died. About 1,500 died of pneumonia and exposure. And the same thing happened the next year. They still weren't getting their materials. They're being stolen and sold. And they went through another winter in the tents, and they lost close to another 1,500. And depression set in, and alcoholism basically set in. Illegally sold alcohol set in. And by the 1890 census, there was only 450 Pawnee left alive of the original 5,500 that had come down in 1876. Now, we meant well. We wanted to get them to fit in better. But it ended up tragically. Cultural ignorance has gotten a lot of people hurt and killed down through the years. I could tell countless stories, clear back to the very beginning of European American settlement of this continent, people misunderstanding each other and killing each other over it. I've decided this is going to be a two-parter because this is a long video this time, and I'm going to sign off at this point. And next time we will talk about the American tendency to spiritualize greed. Until then, this is the OKIE-SAILING signing off and hoping you have a good Labor Day. Thank you.